Parthians are certainly a faction that many people fear, and there's probably a lot of misconceptions about. And I'd like to address these at the beginning of the video before we get too in depth. People say, oh, you need to play Parthia with lots and lots of cavalry, it's the best way to play Parthia. And whilst this is true to a certain extent, I don't think it is the correct way. I see a lot of people liking Persian hoplites, which I don't see how. I would never recommend the Persian hoplites because they completely suck. Oh, you're like, oh, hammer and anvil, hammer and anvil. How are you gonna do that in a sea? Explain that to me. Like, is the opponent drip feeding you one unit at a time? Like, no, you're not gonna be able to do it, especially with pathfinding. Now in land, obviously this is much more viable, but in siege, likely not. But anyway, side thing over. But Parthia has strengths and weaknesses. Its infantry is weaker than most. Its missiles lack armour, though they do have really high damage. And its cavalry is exceptional in every class. And it even has the ability to bring elephants, which a lot of people forget. It has its main strengths in terms of cavalry is the camel cataphracts, camel spearmen, eastern cataphracts, and noble horse archers. In terms of foot infantry, this includes missiles and spear and melee infantry. Your core units are going to be the Parthian swords, hillmen, and Parthian foot archers. But you certainly have a lot of options in terms of the missiles of what you can bring. Eastern slingers, eastern javies, Parthian foots. Yeah. That should cover it for overall strengths and weaknesses for Parthia. And I will go show you them on the open plane. We'll kick it off with the Eastern Spearmen. Eastern Spearmen being a very much a fodder unit. They don't really do anything other than burn down towers, put up siege equipment, and if they can get into cavalry, they might be able to start dropping them. Assuming the cavalry doesn't charge them, like they have nothing going for them this season. Spearman, it's the variant that doesn't have square, costs 180, so it's more expensive than other ones, though it's the standard Eastern Spearman that most factions get. Hillman is you're going to be your primary low tier, due to them having javelins, still being cheap at 220, 10 AP. Once again, going to fulfill the same role as Eastern Spearman, but sacrificing bonuses at large for Peeler and slightly better melee stats. They're still going to die anyway. But they're still a competent unit if used correctly, like it says. Burning down towers, pushing up siege equipment, javelins, tanking javelins, cheap unit like this, that is how you use them. Don't expect them to get a lot of value for you. Gone over it several times, different factions, and several times to come, really, but Hillmen are a staple of any Parthian army. When it comes to hoplites, these guys are a scam, and these guys are also a scam. For twice the price of a Hillman, you're getting a hoplite, which does have some survivability, but it's no more survivable than a Pontic sword, if you look at the armour and health, though it does have slightly more block chance. Has that bonus is large, okay morale, really poor offensive stats. This thing isn't going to get value for you. Many people are like, oh, you can get, cataphracts, and then just go, hammer and anvil, go all the way around here, and like this. You're just assuming there's just one straight front line, and, you're just recharging it. There's no protection, no enemy cav, no other units that aren't currently engaged that can just throw peeler at you. Like, it's not gonna work. Don't bring the Persian hoplites. I'd rather get 2 hillmen for the extra javelins, because also you can just get javelin to the face, and then you're really not getting value. Regular hoplites, merc hoplites, I don't recommend them. They're even worse than the regulars because they're 5 less armor. You know how my thoughts on regular hoplites are anyway. Don't bring them. Even as a Parthia, I'd rather have low tiers, invest heavily into Cav, or into Parthian swords, which are one of my favourite units despite them being rather lackluster. But don't bring the Merc hoplites. Please, 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 please don't. Hammer and Anvil in a siege barely ever works, and I'm going to leave it at that. Parthian swordsmen, gonna be your staple infantry unit. They're dumpable with 55 HP. But they do have 60 morale, which is quite nice. The reason why I like them so much. 59 melee defense, slightly higher than average. Lower attack scores, slightly expensive at 730. They do get shield wall. I do like their morale because the longer they're in the fight, the more kills they're gonna get. So you can bring varied amount from 4 to 7 to 8. It really depends on what you're trying to go for Parthia. These guys don't really compare to anything other than Thorax or Pontics, because Thorax will probably beat them, but you're going to make the Thorax rather useless after. But if you're going against anything better like Chosen Swordsman, the Parthia's a good pick in Tava, and he picks up the Cav and the Archers. Or Bow AI, you're going to struggle a lot. In terms of missiles, I've organised them in different categories because there's a lot of them. So you have two choices for peltists. You have the mercenary peltists, which are standard peltists for 420, capped at 3 because they're mercs, or the Eastern Javelins. I prefer the Eastern Javelins because of the higher damage, whilst they have worse combat stats and lower armour. Sorry, that notification really threw me off there. What was I saying? Oh yeah, survivability. Mercenary peltists. You can bring them if you're really going to lose that missile fight, because Parthia you don't have armored archers, you have damaging ones. You can bring them. I won't ridicule you for bringing them, though it's a bit of an unusual pick, because I do prefer the Eastern Javelinmen for their capability to dish out more damage from afar. Eastern Slingers, not gonna standard fight as they are an Eastern missile. As we all know, they don't have high morale, only 20. Though they do have some nice damage, at 23 for 380, you can bring them as Parthia for the extra ammo. They're better against factions with hoplites than the Parthian sorts would be, because they have more AP per shot and more ammo. Meaning the guaranteed damage you're going to be doing is higher. I'd say you could bring 2 of these max. It really depends on the map though, because the Parthian foots are so cost effective, and I'll get onto why. But Eastern Slingers you can definitely make a part of your army, especially when sallying. And the reason why is they only go for 2. The Parthian for Archers. 40 damage, precision shot for 400. Archers! These guys are really good at killing infantry. They can do damage to archers, though they won't sustain themselves in an archer fight. They only have 10 armor and 50 HP. Nothing impressive. Kimberly will probably do better than them. They only cost 400, so they're relatively cheap. And they basically make every other archer Parthia has outclassed, because the Persian Lights and the Elite Persians, we all know 8 Elite Persians, for 530 you don't even get an armoured archer, you just get spears and melee. Persian Lights are 40 less than their Parthian foots, but they lack precision shot, morale, and the damage. For 40 more, I'd almost always pay more for the Parthian foots due to the extra damage. The kill ceiling they have is far higher for just that little bit extra cost. And then, obviously, Persian Light is still a solid choice, but I don't recommend it, because I would say it's solid because cheap. But I'd still recommend Parthian foots, and Elite Persians are an absolute scam. Don't ever bring them, I swear to God, if I see you bringing them, I will crucify you. Anyway, moving on to horse archers, they have a whole variety here. I'll do the camel first, as it is sort of like sticking out like a sore thumb. Camel archers aren't worth it. While they are camels, they can only shoot frontally, meaning if anything's behind you, unlike a regular horse archer, as you can see, they can't shoot anywhere other in front of them. The rest can. So yeah, keep that in mind. They are pretty cheap though, but even then you have better options. Armoured horse archers. Now we're going to go from right to left, rather than in particular cost order. Armoured horse archers, they're alright for 640. They only have 40 armour. They do have crazy high damage. They do all different kinds of shot and precision shot. They can do alright damage on the charge against missiles, especially unarmoured ones, because they're medium and they have okay stats. I wouldn't recommend them though, because you have cheaper options that I'd rather have, or the Noble Horse Archer, just for a little bit more, 40 more. That is essentially a mini cataphract. As said with the Masagetai, Noble Horse Archers, Sucker Cataphract Horse Archers, mini cataphracts. For skirmishers, you're only javelin cavalry. High damage, very fast, everything else is awful. But they're definitely good against factions like Saba, because the javelins have a hidden bonus is large compared to arrows, and higher AP, meaning they can probably delete a camel cataphract by themselves, which is then just value, and then you can use them for whatever else, because they're not going to do anything else. Yeah. Good against other cav. I wouldn't recommend it against anything else, though. Merc's Armation Horse Archers. I'm actually going to compare them against the Parthian Foots. They are 20 less, capped at 4 because they're mercenaries, but they are worse than the Parthian Horse Archers. You can obviously bring them if you don't want to save money, though I'd rather have the Parthian Horse Archers. But they're still, the Sarmatians are still good. They still have the high damage, they're still really cheap. They're still going to fulfill the same function as a Parthian Horse Archer and probably do the same job just as well. And Parthian Horse Archers, just to make a direct comparison, 1 more melee attack, 5 more HP, 10 more morale, precision shot, but sacrifices the Cantabrian Circle for 20 more. I'd rather have it. Noble Horse Archers, one of your 2 general options. Parthia does lack general options than the Royal Cataphract, as you can see in my hotbar. Really, really armoured. Doesn't have the 40 damage, though has precision shot, all the different kinds of shot. Good melee stats, very heavy missile cav mass, means once they're out of ammo, they're not useless. They're gonna do a lot of damage on the charge, much like the Saka Cataphract Horse Archers. Just a slightly worse variant, but they also cost 70 less than they do. I'd almost always take this as my general option if you're using the +1 rule, even in standard rules, because the Royal Cataphract is so expensive. Even if you do just a regular 1-4, I'd rather have this because that allows me to bring how much more funds? 120 plus 450, 570 more funds. I can invest that into other cav or my infantry. So yeah, that's why I'd rather have this as a general option than the Royal Cataphract. And since we're speaking for Royal Cataphract, I'll skip over these guys for a moment and go to the Shock Cav. Merc's Armation Lancers are 340, capped at 4, maybe they're capped at 6, I can't remember. They're not that good. Medium Shock Cav, they're very cheap. They're basically step Lancers. I wouldn't bring them. I'd rather just bring more low tiers or invest that money into better cav, because these guys aren't going to do much for you, though. They're fast and they're cheap, so cheap and cheerful cav, you can bring it, but don't expect it to do much. It'd probably kill Eastern Archers though if you think it's an Armenia. Royal Cataphracts, the best cav in the game, I think, for GC Grand Campaign. Excellent survivability, 120 health and 110 armor, no shield, low melee defense, immense stats for like offensively, 65 morale, trample, 114 charge bonus. God forbid these guys get into your line, because if they do, you are dead. End of. But they're very slow, they can be bogged down very easily. Just putting that out there. Camel Cataphracts, due to the way they collide of models, they don't collide with each other as easily, make them more effective against infantry. These guys are your main anti-infantry cav, but they are easily beaten by stuff like Eastern Cataphracts. Hippeas can do well against them if you don't hit that trample, but overall their stats are pretty damn good if you take a look at them for yourself. Really high charge bonus, you can see that really good survivability. Costs 1,160, a little bit less, quite a lot less than the Royal Cataphract. And yeah, these guys are going to be your primary anti-infantry cav force. When it comes to anti-cav cav, I don't know what's going on there. Just gonna shimmy over to the right, I guess. Compared to the Camel Cataphracts, they have higher health. I actually didn't notice their health, to be fair. I didn't think it was that high, but it is. Slightly lower stats overall, but the health is what makes it. Because if you look, these have 15 or more health. And they also cost 100 lefts. That is why they can beat the Camel Cataphracts. And most of the things. They do have trample, both of them, as I will show you their charge bonus. 107. 101. But yeah, clear distinctions. Camels, anti-infantry cav. Eastern Cataphracts, anti-cav cav. Moving on to the melee cav. You have Camel Spearman for 420, a cheap and cheerful camel, mini camel. Cataphract, it's still very good. I'd bring them. I've gone like 250 kills double chevron, getting into archers, even the armored ones like Syrians. You will do a lot of damage once you get in due to that camel mass and stuff. And how they work compared to horses. Well, why don't the camel archers work in the same way? I don't know, though I'd imagine it's to do with survivability. Or just better offensive stats in general. And they have melee cav mass, not missile cav mass, might have something to do with it. For 420, they're cheap and shelf option. You can use these guys as a distraction for the camel cataphracts, or the camel cataphracts as a distraction for these guys. Doesn't matter, either camel getting in is gonna hurt a lot. So, yeah, I'd bring a camel spearman just to mess around a bit. So, you won't be losing much value if they do die. Medium cav is a good cavalry. The only drawback is it's medium. It costs 620, relatively cheap. It's good at chasing down other cav and acting as a cav deterrent, though Parthia has better options in the noble blood cavalry, or just bringing in Eastern Cataphract, which is why it's a bit overshadowed, though it's not a bad cavalry unit, it really isn't. Quick little tea break, sorry. Yeah. They're pretty good, though they're overshadowed, is what I'd say. But don't expect them to win cav fights on their own against most things, as they probably lose. As most cav you'll be seeing on the field is elite, or near that level, which is why I'd say bring the Noble Blood, or Cataphracts. Speaking of Noble Blood, I will show you the direct stat comparison. These guys are not only heavy, they also cost 130 more. They have 6 more attack, 10 more health, which is a lot, and 5 more morale. Only costing 750, still relatively cheap. I'd bring them. So, if you want to, like, help with anti-cav duties, Noble Blood cav is a cheaper option, though once again, against elite cav, they will fall away. But if you have an Eastern Cataphract, these guys are gonna make up for the lack of speed the Cataphracts have. These guys could chase an enemy cav, potentially being faster than the Eastern Cataphracts catch up and decimate them. That is how you'd use the Noble Blood cav. There's elephants. Parthia is often forgotten to have elephants, but you can. 1500 Indian war elephants. Risky investment. Very risky. Like all elephants, they can potentially kill more of you than the enemy. Though, it is nice to get the jump for people of these, because when people think Parthia, they think camels, they think horse archers, they don't think elephants. And elephants are great against killing everything, except pikes and potentially hoplites. Though just be aware that if you lose the missile fight, these guys are probably going to be a huge waste of funds, because unless they use on their armor with Parthian swords, which will fall away more fast than the Thorax would, due to having 5 less HP, the 55 compared to 60, they're going to have more ammo left over, meaning that's more ammo for your elephants, so just be aware of that. And just to finish this video off, I will post army comps on screen, so an attacking one would probably look something like a Noble Horse Archer, 2 camels, 8 infantry who are using my max 8 rules, 4 Parthian for archers using Bountiful +1, 3 if not. Bunch of low tiers. Defense is variable, so I'll post 2 in quick concession. One that's more of an infantry focus, and another that is far more cavalry focused. And that will wrap up our video for Parthia. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.